To start this video, I have to be brutally honest with you all. I did not care for Batman as a child. Though there were many versions of him, all of them seemed too good for me, or for any of us. With his genius intellect, godlike physique, and billions of dollars, he would only be able to look down upon us from his pedestal. But despite his superiority, I tried to understand his appeal. One way I would try was by mimicking my older cousin. Without a prominent father figure in my life, I didn't have an example for what it meant to be a strong and healthy man. So I would look for guidance and try to follow in the footsteps of my cousin, who idolized Batman. I would try to enjoy his Batman video game collection, which included Batman Vengeance and Batman Dark Tomorrow. I would join him at the gym to try and get our ideal Batman physique after watching the old movies. And I even considered copying him in his pursuit of majoring in criminal justice to become the world's greatest detective. Unfortunately, despite all my efforts, the allure of Batman still felt like an enigma I couldn't seem to grasp. After many failed attempts to connect with my cousin and understand his appeal for a man dressed up as a bat, I chalked it all up to one idea. I wasn't strong enough. Where my cousin would be developing his six-pack of abs, I would joke about my six-pack of flabs. It was no wonder why Batman didn't resonate with me. My cousin was trying to be Batman, and I was stuck being the Penguin. My weight wasn't the only thing I was self-conscious about. There were so many ways in which Batman, and even his alter ego Bruce Wayne, was the ideal picture of masculinity, and I was merely a crude drawing of what a man was supposed to be. Batman had incredible wealth, while my family fought through bankruptcy. Batman had all the ladies, including my cousin, fawning over him, while I was always picked last or forgotten for any occasion. Batman even had an incredible IQ and could solve even the most difficult of riddles, while I got an F in algebra. Batman was everything I wasn't, and he came from something that I couldn't resonate with. So what did that say about me? Ultimately, whether it was out of embarrassment or shame, I tried to ignore that question as I pushed Batman aside to be forgotten amongst the shadows. The moment that changed everything was when my mother dragged me to watch The Dark Knight in the summer of 2008. I was reluctant to go, since I wasn't a huge fan and had skipped Batman Begins in the years prior. But watching The Dark Knight completely changed my opinion on Batman. From the incredible cinematography and the fast-paced action sequences, to the complex characters like the Joker, Two-Face, and even Batman, who were all performed to perfection. It was an incredible movie. At the time, I'm not sure if it was my age and my newfound understanding of the complexities of the Batman universe, or just the brilliance of the film, but I finally understood the elusive appeal my cousin fawned over for so many years. Now I desperately wanted to be just like the godly figure that Batman was. In fact, I was so enamored by the movie and the masculine strength that Christian Bale embodied that while the credits were rolling, I dropped to the sticky movie theater floor and started doing push-ups. The only thing that stopped me was my mother, who smacked me upside the head for blocking the people trying to leave. Luckily, that didn't crush my spirits. I had drunk the Kool-Aid of the Bat, and I was hooked. I began to admire all the manly qualities that Batman embodied, because he was what society painted as the perfect man. Finally, I could relate to my cousin, and I started to understand what it meant to become a man, especially when my 13th birthday arrived and I was graciously gifted the greatest Batman and superhero game of all time, Batman Arkham Asylum. I cannot begin to describe how incredible it was to play that game as I entered my adolescence, so I'll let Greg Miller's IGN review of Batman Arkham Asylum speak.
Arkham Asylum makes you feel like you're Batman.
I was punching bad guys with incredible precision. I was solving the most complex cases with my detective expertise. I was stopping even the most insane of criminals. And finally, I had the chance to be the Batman. In a way, playing Batman Arkham Asylum prepared me for becoming a man. The game introduced me to a wide array of characters and information about the Batman universe, much of which I had no idea of. One aspect that they introduced was the horrific stories integral to so many of the characters. From the serial killer Victor Zsasz, who marked his body after every murder, the fear toxin injected by Scarecrow, which could make your greatest fears come true, to even Amadeus Arkham's descent into madness after providing fatal electric shock treatments to the inmate who killed Arkham's entire family. Every character was haunted by a combination of their horrific past and severe mental health issues that pushed them along their descent into insanity. But our Bat hero, an absolute unit of a man, remained largely unaffected. How could Batman, the one who had both of his parents murdered in front of him, not become as crazy as those in the asylum? The answer to that lies within his own character bio, particularly within the first line of his attributes: trained to physical and mental peak. Now, the qualities in him that I couldn't resonate with as a child became what I strived for as I started to become a man. Batman was the pinnacle of masculinity. He was at the peak of what it meant to be a strong and healthy man. Being at the top provided him the security and safety of not joining those in the cells of the asylum. He didn't need any Titan toxin in his blood to transform him like the Joker did at the end of the game. He was already the best he could be. Now, if Batman could prevent himself from dipping into insanity by just being a strong man, I had to strive for that too. I thought that would be the healthy thing to do, to be like Batman, with his stoicism and resolve against even the most harrowing of experiences, so that the horrors of life wouldn't get to me. After finishing the game, I kept the lessons Arkham Asylum and Batman gave me, letting them shape my understanding of what it meant to be a man. But little did I know, it mainly served as a teaser for what's to come. Just like the way childhood feels, because life, masculinity, and the Batman universe becomes much more complicated, especially as Bruce Wayne gets himself inserted into a giant city prison named Arkham City, in the aptly named 2011 sequel, Batman Arkham City. It was surreal to start the game as Bruce, to see the man beneath the mask, who, despite the chaos and horrors going on around him, was still able to show unwavering strength. It was finally time to dive back in and show everyone what a man was. But something strange happens in Arkham City, something I had not expected when it came to that strong, healthy man that Batman was. Illness. As the Joker injects Batman with his own Titan-infected blood, we start to see Batman succumb to his illness. His own blood began attacking him, destroying any sense of health he had. He began to crumble right before my eyes. It must be devastating, horrifying, to know that your body is dying from the inside out. To feel that you have so much more left to do with this life, yet it kills you to try and muster up the strength you need to complete your mission. Understandably, Batman becomes angry, frustrated over the limited amount of time he has. He becomes more cruel with his impatience, willing to harm others to get what he desires most: the cure, a chance to get better. Not only for himself, but for the people of Gotham who could be infected by this toxic blood. On top of that, the extreme measure to murder all of the inmates under Protocol 10 begins, which would overwhelm even the toughest of men. And yet, despite the strength of our masked crusader beginning to falter and his vulnerabilities being exposed, he was able to man up, saving everyone and persevering, even if he had a little help from his friends. Following the final confrontation with Clayface, the Joker, after stupidly attacking Batman, dooms himself as his only cure shatters on the floor. This instant, the moment that Joker laughs his last laugh, has always sat with me. As Batman carried the Joker's lifeless body out of the theater, I could only ask myself one question. How? How was Batman able to keep his strength and composure even when the world around him was falling apart, and especially when he was dying on the inside. The fact that Batman was trained to mental and physical peak was no longer satisfying as a solution. How could I reach that as a 15-year-old teen? So I desperately wanted the answer to this question, one that I could achieve. Because I was able to experience Arkham City during an incredibly troubled time in my life. And I needed to be strong enough for it. Most importantly, I needed to be strong for my brother-in-law, Wilson, who had been diagnosed with leukemia, cancer of the blood. It's poignant to see the similarities between Batman and Wilson. Batman was a character I never sought out. He entered my life in a non-traditional way. My older cousin loved him, and because of that, I got to know him. Eventually, after a long time, I began to love him too. Wilson was also a person who entered my life in a non-traditional way. My sister loved him, but when they married, it wasn't met with celebration. But despite the cold welcome he had received, I got the chance to know him, and eventually, after a long time, I began to love him too. Throughout my childhood, I've had numerous people who were pillars in my life leave. So when I got the chance to get to know Wilson, it felt like someone was finally entering my life instead. And I cherished every second of having an older brother for the first time in my life. There were so many times we'd go out to the park to play soccer, or rent some games from a Hollywood Video and play them together. He showed me a ton of games that shaped who I am today, and we made memories that I will always remember fondly. Even when he and my sister welcomed their first child together, and the bills began to pile up, he still made time for me. That is what I cherished, and I loved having time. So when Wilson was diagnosed with leukemia, that was something that was stripped away from him. He didn't have much time left. I vividly remember visiting him constantly during his chemotherapy treatments in the hospital, where he became a skinny, frail version of his former self. Before entering his hospital room, we'd have to douse ourselves with hand sanitizer and put on masks in order to prevent our own germs from being an issue, since his immune system was being battered by both the disease and his chemotherapy. We had to be careful. He wasn't strong enough. Yet despite what they told us of his lack of strength, I didn't see him as weak. In a way, I started seeing him as Batman. He was a man battling the world and his own toxic blood. Yet despite his struggles, he put on a face of strength and persisted. That was the manly thing to do. And if he could show strength in even the toughest of times, I had to as well. I greeted him daily with the manly stoicism I hoped society and he would have appreciated, and I watched him do the same. Despite his condition, he still mustered the strength to make time for my sister, his toddler-aged daughter, and for me, who loved playing games with him despite not showing it well enough. He fought to be with his family. This battle against a horrific enemy went on for 2 excruciating years. A battle Wilson would ultimately lose after vigorously holding on. He was one of the strongest men I have ever known. When we buried him, he was surrounded by dozens of family members, including my older cousin, whom I hadn't seen in years. Though many people have left my life before, Wilson marked the first departure of someone who could never return. Despite putting on a mask of strength for all these years, I couldn't help but feel the pain of losing my brother. It became all-consuming, creating a void in my soul, knowing that life just moves on without him. But I tried to be strong. I couldn't let the horrors of his passing affect me. I couldn't allow myself to be vulnerable. When they finished burying him, all that remained was the mound of dirt where my brother rested. I stared at it, its emptiness palpable. Wilson's father slowly approached the dirt, collapsing onto his knees. He began to sob, tears streaming onto the ground and his hands clutching clumps of dirt, attempting to hold his son one last time. Despite my struggling stoic nature, Wilson's father was able to be vulnerable, to voice his grief. Soon his sobs transformed into wails, as his attention bounced between the sky and the dirt, searching for an answer to how life could have been this cruel. Everyone's attention was focused onto the scene, at his weakness. On my left, my aunt whispered to the man next to her, "That's just not right. It looks so bad, disgusting. He should be ashamed of himself." Hearing those words broke something inside me. He should be ashamed for crying over the death of his son. He should be embarrassed for showing any sign of vulnerability. He should not feel like a man because men don't show emotion. Men have to be strong. This is what has been reinforced throughout my entire life, whether through my family, society, or my perception of a caped crusader I had learned to admire. Yet something about me was rejecting those ideals. I felt angry. You have no idea how angry my aunt's words made me. They bounced around in my head like a bag of nails, puncturing holes in my understanding of the world. I was so angry at her, at society for perpetuating irrational standards. I was so angry at life and the rigid constraints that men had to follow. I was so angry at everything. And yet, in the following years, I didn't feel like a man because I couldn't hold it in any longer. Wilson's passing was the beginning of my mental health struggles. In the year after he passed, I became depressed and developed an eating disorder. I struggled with my life, the weight of the world, my own body, and the will to keep fighting. I couldn't persevere any longer. I felt so weak. All I could think about was that question. How? How was Batman able to keep his composure and strength even when everything was falling apart? And why couldn't I? I desperately wanted to be strong, to be Batman, so I wouldn't have to feel the pain that I continued to feel every single day. I needed answers. So, after years of trudging through my mental anguish, I was lucky enough to get to play Batman Arkham Knight, hopefully able to finally find the answers I was looking for. As the years had gone by, where I could feel my weakness had grown, Batman seemed to only have gotten stronger. Equipped with new tools, a new suit, and insane enhancements to his skills, Batman was at the peak of his strength. And clearly, he was doing just fine. The horrors of both the Asylum and the city seemed to have no effect on him whatsoever. But as the game progresses, something else appears that I had not expected from the strong man that Batman was. The Joker. To my surprise, the events of Arkham City had a profound effect on Batman. The toxic blood that came from the Joker was now manifesting its way into Batman's consciousness. Throughout the game, we see the Joker haunting and taunting Batman, including the moments where he cripples Barbara and seemingly kills Jason Todd. It was in these moments where I realized that after all of these years, I had been wrong. Wrong about strength, wrong about masculinity, and wrong about Batman. By all accounts, we're just a bunch of bumbling individuals trying to get answers from our heroes. We put people on pedestals, expecting them to be better than us. Somehow, we think billions of dollars, labeling their attributes as mental and physical peak, or even putting on a suit to stop crime, requires us to admire them, to try to be them. We see them as the pinnacles of strength, health, and masculinity, but they're not. They're human, just like me and just like Wilson, struggling with our own demons, hoping to help the ones we love, and fighting to make it through life every single day. This idea made me realize that I was one of those bumbling individuals who put Batman on a pedestal. I admired his strength, his stoicism which concealed any weakness or vulnerability. I aspired to be him. I believed that that would make me strong, because he always was. And when I felt weak, I made the conclusion that Batman should be ashamed of us. But the truth is, he isn't. He's just like us. I should have never been looking to be Batman, or seeing myself as Batman. I should have been seeing Batman as me. To see this strong, manly hero as human. To empathize with his situation, his grief. To understand one another deeply, be vulnerable, and care. Because that is truly missing. And that is what I so desperately needed growing up. I needed to believe that it was okay and encouraged for men to care. Just like Wilson's father crying over his son's grave. I never found that moment shameful or embarrassing. I was proud of him for showing his vulnerability, to show love for his son. As men, the strongest thing we can do is to love freely and care for those around us, despite just how much society shames us for it. Because it's not shameful. It's a goddamn superpower. After all these years, after finishing Batman Arkham Knight and closing this chapter in my life, I wished I had the strength I am developing all those years ago. I was wrong for only admiring all the strong, manly qualities that society told me that Batman embodied, because there was so much more to Batman than just being strong. He was also kind. He loved and cared for so many people. From the Bat Kids he adopted to the entire city of Gotham, Batman cared. When the Joker, or many of the Batman villains, embraced the chaos of life, Batman served as the antithesis to them, seemingly because of his unwavering strength and refusal to have the horrors of life affect him. The truth was that he was morally sound, refusing to take the life of any criminal, no matter their crimes. He wasn't strong because he didn't care about them, but because he did. Overall, Batman showed me that although everyone could be a hero, everyone could be a villain instead. And being a villain is far easier. Life is an incredibly tough battle, but having the strength to be a hero and to care for everyone around us is the most important thing a man or anyone can do. Now, it has been many years since I first played the Arkham series, and Wilson had passed away. And yet, these lessons that I have learned have only gotten stronger. Kindness is something I find scarce in today's society. It's as if we made it our mission to stop caring, to let the world burn and not care enough to save it. In all honesty, I understand. The world feels like it's changing every single day, mainly for the worse. It's overwhelming. In these troubling times, I look to those who can inspire me. And one who continuously inspires me is Batman. Not the character, not Bruce Wayne, but the people behind him. All the writers, comic book artists, and even film crew who care to bring such intricate and heartfelt Batman stories to life. How grateful I am to them. They're trying to make the world a better place. But it's in these moments of gratitude that I can't help but feel the loss of the one man who made Batman the hero I admired. Kevin Conroy. Serving as the voice actor for Batman in several iconic iterations, including the Arkham Trilogy. I've always loved the nuance Kevin would bring to Batman. Underneath the masculine gruff, there's layers of kindness baked into every sentence. Kevin's voice has always brought a comfort to me, unsurprisingly. He was innately human, like me, like Wilson, and like Batman. So he had to deal with the horrors of this world as well. He dealt with an alcoholic father, supported his schizophrenic brother, and fought against rampant homophobia when he started his career. But despite the horrors, Kevin showed incredible strength, making the world a better place and caring for others where he could. All the way until his passing in 2022 of intestinal cancer. Oddly enough, one of my fondest memories of Kevin was a cameo graciously shared on Reddit by user maliciousb87. In it, Kevin says,
"You don't have to have superpowers to be tenacious. In your goals in life, all you have to do is care enough to try. And the world needs us right now to try more than ever. There is so much crisis in the world right now. These are crazy times that we're living through. And we need each other more than ever."
I am so grateful that this video was shared, because it means so much to me, as it meant so much to others, and malicious me 87 as well, even though it wasn't meant for the world to see. Kevin Conroy was trying to make a difference, to make just one person's life better. And in the pursuit of speaking to one person, or playing just one character who dresses like a bat, he reached millions. It shows me just how much of a difference we can make in our world, and how much our words, actions, and care can change or save someone's entire life. This lesson of how much we can make an impact always reminds me of my fondest memory of Wilson. During his stay at the hospital, he had brought his PS3, and they had hooked it up to the television screen attached near the ceiling. He had begun to play a brand new game, one that he was excited to play. Batman Arkham Asylum. I watched him briefly, a smile on his face as he fought his way through the corridors of the asylum. It was in this moment that I broke the stoicism I had been keeping up. I told him how amazing that game was, how much I loved it, how cool Batman was, and that he should play its sequel, as it was even better. In that moment, I couldn't help but feel his energy. He was excited for the game, for the future. Though I didn't tell him that I loved him, in that moment, I knew he felt it. And I knew Batman was there to bring us closer together. As I left his hospital room for the day, I couldn't help but look back, seeing him play as Batman. But when he thought I had left, he put the controller down. He had put up a mask of strength, and he was fighting constantly. I wish I could have gone back there, played with him longer, or talked to him more. But he needed rest to fight another day. As I watched him lay, eyes closed, I knew Batman would be proud of how strong he was. And I am too.